Good afternoon, Norton. Thank you so much for all of you who are turning in to get some information about the Norton Middle School Roof Project. My name is Jennifer O'Neill. I am the superintendent of Norton Schools. And this afternoon, I have Matt Zorick with me as well, who is our architect. I'm going to let Matt tell you a little bit about himself.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. My name is Matt Zorick. I'm a senior project manager with Time Bond. Yeah, we were selected as designer for this school, and I've been with Time Bond for about 15 years now, and happy to join Norton on this project.
Great. Thanks, Matt. So my thought for the today is that we will guide the community through some slides that have some information about the project. And I will share some information from my perspective, and then Matt will share some information from more of a design lens and answer some of the questions that are out there in the community. So, why does Norton Middle School need a new roof? For those of you who have been part of our community for a while, you may know that Norton Middle School has had ongoing leaking issues since the building opened in 1998. We have documentation all the way back from really the first day of school showing water leakage throughout the building during heavy rain. We have done repeated repairs over almost 30 years when it comes to patching of the roof itself and issues of waterproofing and flashing repairs. We also have had issues when it comes to the warranty limitations themselves. When a roof is built in 1998, it is now 2026. We are well past warranty and really well past the actual shelf life for this roof itself. So I'm going to let Matt kind of answer some more specific questions about that. Matt, is this typical for what you see in a roof that's this age?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, it's past its useful life. This was built back in the 97, 98 period. The roofing membranes back then were about 20-year warranties. And we're at almost 20 to 29 years. So definitely over that. You can, maintain the roof through patching and some maintenance, but that doesn't last forever, and it gets more intensive as the roof gets older. So you get to a point where you can't maintain it like it should be. And then also the other thing too is there's some flashings that need to be replaced on this roof. It can't be done with typical patching either. And the flashings are, basically the termination points where the roofing system meets the building envelope or some other component. And some of those kind of go through the brick veneer. So you can't just maintain the roof system itself. You kind of need to get into those flashings as well to fix the problem.
Great. Matt, can you explain a little bit more what really happened with the flashing? Is it something that deteriorated over time, or does it seem like there was an initial issue when it was installed?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think there was some deficiencies. It's hard to see because we don't have X-ray vision, so you can't really see through the brick to see all the flashings. But where we did do an infrared scan, and there was some areas that showed some moisture getting, near the flashing areas, and there was some historic, evidence of, moisture issues around the flashings and stuff like that. And there were some repairs done through the years which led us to believe that there's actually bigger issues with the flashing than you can kind of see from the eye from the outside. So the other side to this too is when you do a new roof system, you're adding insulation, which increases your thickness, which reduces your overall flashing height that you need to maintain warranties as well. So that's another big thing of getting into these flashings is we need to now raise them up to get them higher and have an 8-inch minimum thickness or elevation above the roofing system, so that we can make sure we're maintaining the warranties with the new systems as well.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
I think, when we think about our school buildings, we think a lot about the importance of having a safe environment for our students. We want to make sure that it is a watertight building, that they're not being disrupted with leaks throughout the day or other damage, making sure that all of our learning spaces are really healthy, protecting the air quality. And quite honestly, there are a lot of disruptions when you have consistent leaks across the building, making sure that all of our materials, thinking about technology and curriculum resources are all available. I think it's important to mention that we as a district do air quality assessments every single year and make sure that there is nothing that comes back that is concerning about student or staff safety. And for example, earlier this fall, there was an issue that was hitting for mold in a small area in the front vestibule. What happened is that area was closed down. It was remediated and then opened back up once it was fixed and the air was retested again. So I think that's really important to share with families that it is safe. And then here are some pictures. So actually, this big picture at the top right is just from last week. We had a lot of melting going on with the warmer weather coming up, and we had quite a number of buckets in the cafeteria. Have you seen that picture yet, Matt? Or
I
is
have
that
not
going
seen
for
that one.
you?
No,
Yeah.
no.
So the roof over the cafeteria is actually a metal roof. Matt, could you explain a little bit about the different types of roof that we have across the middle school and what the challenges are with each of them?
Yep. Yeah. So I believe it's almost 100,000 square feet of roof area. And this is a very challenging building. It's not one system and not one elevation. It's multiple elevations. I want to say there's about 26 different kind of sub roof areas, which makes this roof very complicated. Makes it look nice, but complicated.
I think I have
Um,
22, so and that's the number that always comes up in
oh,
my mind. So
22.
it's probably right in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in those areas, there some sections have EPDM, which is basically like a rubber type material. It's kind of like a black rubber. You kind of looks like a tire almost. But then you have metal roofing on kind of the sloped areas, so the cafeteria and some of the higher roof areas. Um, in theory, the metal roofs they should last, quite a while. The new ones have warranties of 35 years, 40 years sometimes. But they do go bad, and there's different technologies that are out there now in terms of how the seams interlock and all that stuff, which makes them more watertight, weathertight. But yeah, for some reason, the metal roofs here, I think they're recoated at one point too, but they have seen significant kind of section loss in them themselves. There's some rusting, there's pitting, there's a lot of various concerns with the metal system, and yeah, for example, in the cafeteria, there's been holes there for quite some time, and the buckets are used to mitigate those. Um, so in general, yeah, I mean, leaking roofs, not uncommon. I think a lot of flat roofs and other roofs, they do leak. But however, again, we're near the end of the useful life on this, and you're starting to see the intensity pick up on during these storms or this past winter, which had a significant amount of snowfall. You're going to see kind of intensity pick up on the roofs that need to be replaced because obviously there's going to be more problems with them. They're getting more brittle. There's more sealants that are going bad. So as a system in general, they need to be replaced at some point. They can't last forever. So.
Thank you. And it's as you mentioned, the metal roof, and I believe probably in the late 2000s, maybe 2007, 2008, there was an attempt at mitigating some of the issues on the roof. And I believe, and again, I'm not a roofer, so I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. I believe there was some installation of snow spikes or something along that line to try to melt some of the snow that we had there, and it just ended up unfortunately causing more long-term issues down the road. So you can see the cafeteria, you can see the rotunda there that is also a metal roof. You can see the paint kind of chipping away and the rust, and then just some other areas around the building itself where we've had some leaks. You can see the picture with the barrel. That's one of our sixth grade math classrooms this fall when we were having a pretty significant leak there. And then also just kind of the drywall and the ceiling board really needing to be replaced. These are some outside pictures. And Matt, quite honestly, I'm going to let you kind of talk to these photos here because you and I have both been on the roof, but you're definitely more of an expert when it comes to what we're really seeing here.
Yep, sure. So kind of the top middle picture there, that's one of the step flashings at one of the metal sections where it butts the brick veneer. You see there's a bunch of cracks in the sealants. I think over time there was certain areas that were repaired, some weren't repaired. But in general, a lot of those flashings need to be replaced and raised. Again, as we put a new system on, we're going to have increased insulation thickness. a lot of those flashings don't really get the height that you need to maintain a good weather tight system. So, stuff like that has to be addressed. But you also want to make sure that the brick can weep as well. You'll see there's kind of some notches in the middle there where they can weep out. Those will have to be reset, raised up, and make sure that we can actually drain if any moisture does get behind the brick above the roofing system. The top right, that's a picture of the rotunda with where the windows are. Again, what kind of reported to us was there was some leaks around the rotunda over the years. And that could be a combination of some of the flashing issues, could be some of the sealant issues around the windows. But essentially, part of this project, what we propose is to actually raise the flashing underneath those windows, potentially even replace the windows themselves, and make sure the whole system is weather tight there, because there have been some reported concerns over the years as well. On the lower left, that's just an example of one of the sections of the metal roofing. You can see that, it has the finish is definitely deteriorating, but there's also some holes and some issues there. When we did our IR scan and our walkthrough, so an IR scan is basically we look at the roof to see kind of anomalies in temperature in the roof. And what that does, it allows us to see where there's kind of wet insulation. And that can be indicated of either flashing issues or holes or anything like that. And one of those like orange circles there, is a hole that we might have found when we did the IR scan. And we would mark that down to know that there's, that could be patched, but there's other issues, that may not been able to be patched. But again, the roof is pretty old. There was quite a large number of patches that need to be fixed. And the IR scan also showed other areas of wet insulation that we'll have to remove and replace as well. The picture kind of in the middle right lower side is, an example of a rooftop HVAC equipment. This one kind of gets to the curbing and the insulation height I was mentioning earlier. You want to have typically a minimum of 8 inches of separation between the roof and where the roofing kind of goes up the vertical face of that curbing and terminates and then goes underneath the HVAC equipment. As we add insulation, because of new energy code, that thickness gets reduced if you don't actually take the HVAC equipment off and then reset it and rebuild the blocking and all that. So that's just an example of resetting some of the newer equipment that's on the roof. And then the last picture is the brick masonry and kind of the terminations around some of the windows and stuff. We did walk around the building, and for the most part, I would say that the building masonry looks good. There wasn't like a whole host of concerns, but there were a couple areas where it did look like water could be infiltrating through some of the joints. So, there could be some repointing and some repair that need to be done around those openings as well.
Thanks, Matt. So, question for you on the logistics of this HVAC
Yep.
situation. So, one of the questions that has come up a lot when we've met with boards and in more of a public forum has been, you know, is there a risk that we're going to ruin the HVAC equipment by taking it off and reinstalling it? What would that process look like? And like, what are the risks ultimately?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, yeah, you wouldn't want to take those equipment off, right? They're usually heavier, larger pieces of equipment. You'd like to leave them on the roof. But however, like I meant, there's a couple factors to consider here. One, the insulation thickness. We do need to rebuild the curbs or extend the curbs to get them up to the right height. To do that, you have to take the equipment off to do that. The other thing is, like I said, in the IR scans that we performed, there were some areas of moisture around those units. So the potential is that whatever blocking or materials that those curbs are built out of now could be deteriorated or rotted, and we would like to replace those as well. But to help mitigate that stuff, what we do on our kind of our HVAC mechanical plans is we have some notes for contractors so that before they do any work, they'll go out there and do an inventory of all the equipment. They'll make sure it's running. They'll see if what it's connected to. They'll kind of make an analysis of each piece of equipment. They'll
Mhm.
document it. And then what will happen is electricians will come, they'll disconnect the units, then mechanical will come, they'll take the units off, store it somewhere. Roofers will come do their work, replace the curbing, extend the curbing, and then put the roofing back. And then when everything's ready, they'll take the equipment, put it back on. And then at the end, they'll go through and make sure it's all working again how it was. And we'll have the analysis or the inventory of what it was before we took it off, and that should match when we put it back. So yeah, I mean, there is risk that there could be some damage in that kind of shuffling, but at that point, it would be on a contractor because they're ultimately responsible for that piece of it.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so here's the $1 million question. If it's fine when it goes off the
Mhm.
roof and then it's put back on and it's no longer working, that would be the responsibility of the contractor that took it off and put it back on, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and that's the purpose of doing kind of the pre-inventory because if
That's
we're
great.
all, we'd be there, the OPM would be there, the contractor would be there, we document it all, say, okay, it was working fine when we took it off, now it's not.
Right.
So that kind of gives you that backup information to say, like, well, something must have happened in the process.
That's great to know. All right. So Matt, you're the designer guy, so I'll talk a little bit through the MSBA here for just a minute. So we're super fortunate as a school community that the MSBA has approved us as part of their replacement process for the current school year, 25-26 school year. And so the MSBA is really a partnership with school districts across the Commonwealth to help fund major school construction, improvement projects, roofs, windows, doors, etc. And since they started in 2004, they've actually supported over $18 billion in reimbursements to school districts across the state of Massachusetts. I think one of the really important things for everyone to know is that we as taxpayers in the state of Massachusetts are contributing to the MSBA fund every time we go to the store and we pay sales tax. That 6.25% sales tax, actually, a portion of that goes to annually fund the MSBA projects. So if you live here in Norton, you're going out, you're doing your shopping, whatever you may be buying, you're already contributing to the MSBA program and perhaps to build a school in another community, whether it's Plymouth or Worcester or out in Western Mass. Our tax dollars are already going to that. So it's a good opportunity for us to now reuse the reimbursement rate that the MSBA is offering us. They are offering us a reimbursement rate of 55.63% on this project, which means for every single dollar we spend, we are getting more than 55 cents back on that dollar. It's a really great deal for us. I know that there's been a lot of conversation about the cost of this project, but I think it's important for everyone to understand that we will be getting that 55.63% back. And then this is what the cost looks like. So, Matt, I know that you've been involved in this process too. So, I think the number here, the total project budget is $11,443,631. And my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's all in. That is everything. That's our contingencies. Those are costs for working with the OPM, for working with the design firm, all the contractors, etc. And this is our best estimate as of today on what this could potentially cost us. Am I right on that?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and how this program, the budgets are set, is once you complete the schematic design package, that sets your budget for the whole project. And so as we went through and we evaluated, the roofing cost, all these other costs, and we combined everything together. And what MSBA does is they kind of go through and they look at the eligible and ineligible costs, and they come up with their calculation, and that comes to the maximum total facilities grant number there will be reimbursed. But yeah, essentially, this is an all-in number that also projects out to the future as well. So we're looking for hopefully next year construction. And obviously there's some variables in construction materials and all stuff like that. So we try to incorporate those variables into this estimate as well. So that this is the maximum dollar for the whole project, and the hope is that it can come in under that at the end of the day.
Great. And so we are I was presented last week to another group and I was sharing how, like, when you take your family on vacation, it's always better to over budget and underspend
Mhm.
versus the opposite. And so,
Yep.
having this lock in of a price guarantees that the estimated total facilities grant is that MSBA will reimburse us up to $5,676,524. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think it actually might be the line near the sec at the bottom there, because that
Oh,
includes the contingencies.
oh,
So
I apologize. You're absolutely right.
5.9.
So
Yep,
$5,963,094. Even
correct.
better.
Yep, there you go.
And
Which to your point includes contingencies and line items in there as well as a buffer, because as again, as you progress through the project, there might be some additional surprises that come along the way, but those are kind of factored in the contingency numbers as well.
perfect. And I think the other important thing that we've been chatting about is that we're not at the full design phase.
Correct.
So the schematic design that's been done, what percentage of a full plan is that?
Yeah, it's about 25-30%
Right.
complete. Yep.
So once you get closer to a full plan, we'll have a better idea of where those costs are. So I shared this information that you and James, our OPM, shared with us last fall, and how, you have the total bid cost,
Mhm.
you have the total estimated cost, right? Which ends up typically being significantly more than the actual bid cost. Because it's a public project, we can't just, go out and find a contractor that we know. You have to
Mhm.
go through a public procurement process. We have to have at least three bids. And ultimately, whoever the bid person is with the, competitive price, but also fits all the requirements we have, that's kind of where this goes. So you typically see it a little bit lower than what the estimated cost is, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And so, like, as you mentioned, we're at schematic now where we establish this budget. If this project moves forward and we go to 60% design, at the conclusion of that kind of milestone, we'd also do another cost estimate or opinion of probable cost at that point, which would help refine the numbers. Again, there may be things that we find, there may be things that we can remove from scope. So, like, again, there's some back and forth there to figure out what the number is going to get refined to, but that would happen at 60% as well. And then after you go to the next step of going to 100% construction documents, that's when you put it out to bid. And again, it's a kind of an open market. You don't know what contractors are going to be available for this
Yeah.
project, if they're too busy, if there's not a lot of work out there and you get actually a lot of people interested in this. So there's a lot of variables that go into the number here. And yeah, as a spreadsheet kind of shows there, the good side of this is usually the bid numbers come in less than what we're projecting, especially at schematic. But that's a good thing. We want to plan for better prices and then
Yes.
instead of the opposite, because the problem also is that if bids come in higher than your budget, MSBA doesn't fund that portion as well. So you got to make sure you're kind of covering everything that you can. Make sure you get your maximum facilities grant from MSBA, and then hopefully things come in lower, and then you're covered that way.
Right. Over budgeting and underspending
Yeah,
is the goal, right?
correct.
And then, one of the things that we had talked about is that typically you see between like 70 and 75% of the original estimated bid, original estimated cost ends up being the bid. So some, quick math over here. With the reimbursement rate, we're probably looking between 4 and 5 million for the cost to the Norton taxpayer versus the 11.4. That number looks so big at the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, and then, this is always what we talk about here is, we have the support of our boards. We're very fortunate. The recommendation is that we're going to go forward with a debt exclusion. So everyone wants to know, what is this actually going to cost? So the town hall recently put together some financials for us and they went on the high end. So if we had to pay $5.1 million as a community, on a 20-year loan, it would be $65.46 each year. On a 15-year loan, it would be $75.34. And that's the annual cost to the taxpayer based on the average home cost of 565,000. So I think when you see those numbers there, it's a little bit easier, I think, to kind of wrap your brain around what exactly it will mean for individuals. And then just to, kind of just share some other things. So if it's not approved, we would not move forward with a roof project right now because we just simply could not afford it without the MSB reimbursement. We would need to pull out of the MSB process, and we would need to reapply for the grant again in the future. And because it's an annual process, the reimbursement rate fluctuates from year to year. So there's really no guarantee there. What have you seen, Matt, for reimbursements in the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think they somewhat stay steady. I mean, but every town is different, you
Yep.
know. So it's hard because every community has a different rate, and it's
Mhm.
hard to know what happens. But I think they generally stay steady unless there's drastic changes in the demographics of the community. Yeah,
All right, fingers crossed, right?
yeah,
So, okay, well, that's hopeful. And then I think just some important dates for the community here is in order for the project to be approved, both votes must pass. So the first is Saturday, April 11th, which is our annual town election. Voters will be asked if they support a debt exclusion to replace the Norton Middle School roof right on the ballot. And then on Monday, May 18th, which is our annual town meeting, where they will go through the process there. And they need to have yes votes at both of those. And then this is one of our future Norton Middle School students. And this is actually a great picture because you really can see all those different levels, like the different
yeah.
heights. Um, and it's interesting. One of the questions I received last week was, is there any way that we can change that so there aren't so many different levels of roof? And it's just the way the building's constructed, right?
Yeah, you're kind of stuck with it. I mean, that to modify that, you're getting a whole host of structural issues, and yeah, that would be pretty costly.
I'm sure it would.
Mhm.
Anything I'm forgetting, Matt?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah,
All right. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your help. Hopefully, this will give our community some of the answers that they're looking for.
not a problem. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks.